I think the entire Black Summoner fandom collectively let out an audible, gas of just outrage when the killing blow was about to be sent, and then obviously the teleport happened. At first, I think most of us were probably in the same train of thought, god damn it, we get it, it's a guy you would love to hate and you would be wishing for his death, a potential season 2 or a go read the source material, you'd wait to see the next battle, but it's hard not to be god damn, not only was he just manipulating all the women around him, he tried to do it to our girl, so this man deserves death. Essentially it comes down to don't touch another man's waifu. But the fact that he ended up getting a fate worse than what Kelvin was going to deliver him, that was a twist I wasn't quite expecting, because even though it never really felt like this dude was, respected, or I guess the train of thought would be he's not as needed as maybe someone like the dude who just saved him, but I wasn't quite expecting to see all of his women and then all these cursed weapons, over 100 or something, and then them to just casually hit him, cut him, and apparently heal him over and over so he would not die. He essentially just went from nearly begging for his life, crying like a little baby because he didn't want Kelvin to kill him, to then ending up in a fate where he probably is wishing Kelvin would have killed him because now he realized he's in a fate worse than death. Going from kind of an outrage of being this bastard actually gets to live after seemingly his leg gets cut off. Yeah, they put it back on him, but I'm so glad to see that he's gonna get his own sick punishment for being such a sick bastard. I actually think this guy reminds me of that edgy Redditor who basically just comes across as socially inept, and then in return, if they did get isekai, that's the type of persona you think you would end up getting, where Kelvin's just the normal battle junkie who isn't an edgelord, who isn't a freak of nature. And I love the fact that his weirdest trait is just how hard of a battle junkie he is. So his bad trait is just getting a little too excited, but unlike someone like this, we obviously see how night and day it is for the reincarnation side of things. Overall though, I thought this was a pretty fitting end for this show. If we never got more, I could leave satisfied and feel happy. Yeah, obviously they say at the end of the episode, the story continues. We don't know what that means. That could just be a go read the source ending, or we could end up getting another season eventually. I mean, it does feel like everything eventually gets a season 2, even if it's been 10 years. The anime industry basically cycles through all the popular things they think will do well. If something doesn't at the time, 10 years or 5 years later, they come back around and greenlight season 2s of shows that may not have done as well as they wanted at the time, but they need to fill their anime quota. So would we get more? I think the likely bet is yes, it's just a matter of when. But I think leaving it in this way of him reaching rank S, him going to fight a bunch of rank S adventurers, and also just kind of the general idea of where the story could go, I think it could work well enough. Obviously, I would love to see multiple seasons, but you gotta be a realist when it comes to anime. You understand that most things won't get a full adaptation. I'm just hoping for at the very least a season 2, because there's definitely some plot points that I would like to see resolved. I think they're teasing it with this whole fight here. There's definitely a big battle on the horizon. Jared's story I think would be fun in a season 2, and I think the thing that interests me the most is Ethel and her mother's storyline. They're very much saying that will be something that will be explored in the future, right? She's very much interested in her mother and everything, and while it was a little sweet moment with the hair accessory, it still is something that needs to be explored. So at the very least, I hope we get that season 2, but either way, I could leave this season feeling satisfied, as if the cast grew in a way that each of them felt like an interesting person, and hell, they made a slime who ranged from being an adorable pet that would roam the front yard for them, to being the best backpack one could ask for, but also just being the best mascot and someone could ask for. I think an episode like this, it definitely has production issues that no one could deny. I mean, when it came to the 3D, when it was Kelvin and this man one-on-one, it wasn't necessarily the actual fighting of them moving around, that was fine. It was just some of the close-ups where you'd see a really wonky perspective on the hand. It just didn't match the proportions of the head, or just some of the wider shots, or not even I would consider wider shots, more middle focus. It's just the characters weren't drawn that well. But we're reaching the end of a season. We always expect some production dips here and there. The thing that Black Summoner did really well is that I don't think the production issues really started until the last few episodes. I know some people were ripping into the 3D ever since the Jared fight, but I've always been a pretty avid supporter that it looks pretty good. It's no real different than a JRPG cutscene at worst, and a lot of the times the way the magic and the movements work, it felt like it added something rather than just subtracting. I think this show knew exactly where it needed to refine moments. They recognized that, okay, these two flying in the air, If we want to make the more up-close and personal shots look better with some 3D effects and 2D drawings, we gotta take the shortcut here, refine it as much as we can, and seriously, it's still not the worst I've ever seen. Would I have preferred this entire fight to be 2D? Of course, but it's not something that ruins my enjoyment when it's only there for a few minutes. But it's worth noting, because I really don't have a lot of issues with this show, so the issues I do have, I think it's worth mentioning, because I think this show has been fairly fantastic. 9 out of 10 points within any episode. I thought the fight was actually pretty fun because up to this point, he hasn't really struggled in the way of like, it felt like he met his match, and this episode didn't either. You could tell like he was waiting for a moment, or he was holding back a bit more for some reason. As we saw at the end of the episode, is that he was basically trying to protect the forest that had some connection to Ethel, so he was doing his best to basically protect it. Once that was no longer a viable option, all bets were off, and he basically used a rank-ass spell, which, even if it didn't do exactly what he wanted to, or it wasn't completely accurate, it was a pretty mean punch, all things considered, with that demonic death scythe. But it was pretty fun, man. It really felt like it had a charm, that it wasn't just simply this battle junkie going from battle to battle. They ended up making these character arcs, and each of his party members, the way they would be introduced, or the way they would evolve from a blushing menu goddess to a full-blown avatar goddess. It's nice to see that I felt like I enjoyed all the characters, and that's why, like, the racing at the end, like them trying to race for basically praise, or just like the kind of flattery, like Jared being like, that's my king for you, basically saying, don't touch his woman, as Ethel just blushes into the ground. You felt like you got to know these characters, and while yes, there's definitely these plot points like Jared's revenge, you have Ethel's mother's story, you have this political drama that's currently going on. That's a season, if not more's worth of content, and I want to see that explored, but it's not to say that if we didn't see that explored in anime form, we didn't get to know these characters. I really felt like they grew and evolved from where they started out as, and rather than them just being a meme or just like a generic self-insert or just a character you didn't really care about. I mean, look at Sarah as an example. She started off as a kind of like trapped Demon King daughter. I thought she would be a little more restricted, like maybe a little more emotionless, or just completely overblown tsundere who's kind of a bitch, but you kind of love to hate her. Instead, she felt like her own character. She didn't feel like that generic character you would see in a situation like that. That's kind of how I feel about the cast as a whole, as well as the story and how it opened up from a dude who just searches from battle to battle, but also recognizes, like, bitch please. Like, you have to understand that if your entire drive is to just be a complete douchebag like you are, and you don't care about the people around you, that's where our differences are clearly there. He may be a battle junkie, but he never sacrificed his party for a battle, right? This is a moment where he had to fight, not because he put his party in danger or anything like that. And I like to see the resolve and the character growth in a guy like Kelvin, because he definitely stood out, not only just in this anime season, but I think in this genre, or even like a subgenre like fantasy, not even necessarily isekai, but in that kind of ballpark. I really felt like he stood out, and it was nice to see where he went, and I loved his voice actor. I thought it did exactly what it needed to, from being a bit of a psychotic battle junkie to just being a dude who definitely charmed you, unlike this man who literally had to brainwash people to basically sleep with him or hang out with him, where Kelvin, he understood how the party kind of formed around him, male and female and slimes alike. I'm glad I got to talk about this one week by week. I'm glad the videos did fairly well, because I love talking about this one. It was definitely one of my favorites to discuss, and hopefully we'll get a season 2 and I can do it again. But thoughts, feelings, and ideas on what you'd like to see in a season 2 if we do get it, do let me know. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.